What if I told you the product you think is high margin is actually losing you money on every single order? That's the reality for most e-commerce sellers who pick products based on those generic best high margin products lists floating around the internet. Hey everyone, I'm June with Branvas, and today we're breaking down the best high margin products to sell online in 2026. Plus, I'm giving you a real framework to figure out which products actually make money after all costs are accounted for. Let's get into it. So, here's the problem with most high margin product lists. They rank categories by gross margin percentage and they stop there. That's it. And on a spreadsheet, it looks great. But the moment a real order ships, everything falls apart. Here's why. Sellers confuse gross margin with contribution margin. Gross margin only tells you what's left after subtracting the cost of the product itself. It completely ignores shipping weight, return rates, creative costs, and customer acquisition. Think about this. A $5 sourced item selling for $30 looks like an 83% gross margin. Incredible, right? But after a $12 shipping cost, a $6 return cost per order, and a $15 customer acquisition cost, you are losing money on every single sale while believing you have a high-margin product. And here's the contrarian insight most lists miss. High perceived value matters more than high gross margin. A product that feels premium converts better, which means your customer acquisition cost goes down. Research shows that consumers use price and presentation as shortcuts to judge quality. The same physical product can command dramatically different prices depending on how it's positioned. This is why a $9 necklace in a branded box with tissue paper and a handwritten note can sell for $65, while the same necklace in a poly mailer struggles to sell for $18. The product didn't change. The perceived value did. And that gap, that's where real margin lives. All right, so if gross margin alone isn't enough, how do you actually evaluate a product before you invest? This is where the Branvas Product Viability Score comes in, the BVS. It's a 7-factor scoring rubric that any e-commerce seller can use to get the full picture of a product's real economics. At Branvas, we use this internally when advising brand founders, and I'm going to walk you through each factor right now. You score each factor from 1 to 5, where 5 is best. Factor 1 is gross margin percentage. This is your starting point, not your destination. You want at least 50% to have any room for ads, returns, and overhead. 70% or higher is where you get real breathing room. Factor 2 is shipping economics, and this is where most sellers get blindsided. Carriers charge based on whichever is greater, actual weight or dimensional weight. So a ceramic vase that weighs 2 pounds but ships in a big 12 by 12 by 12 box, the carrier charges you for over 7 pounds. Meanwhile, jewelry ships in a bubble mailer for under $4. That difference alone can be worth 20 to 30 points of contribution margin. Factor 3 is return risk, the silent margin killer. The average e-commerce return rate is about 21% in 2026, but apparel runs 20 to 30%, while accessories sit around 12%. And here's the kicker. Each return costs between $10 and $65 to process, and over 30% of returned items can't be resold as new. Factor 4 is the perceived value index. This measures how much value a customer perceives relative to the product's size and cost. Jewelry scores off the charts here. A $65 necklace weighs under an ounce and costs $8 to produce. That price-to-weight ratio is extraordinary. Factor 5 is repeat purchase potential. This determines whether your customer acquisition cost is a one-time expense or an investment. Jewelry has strong repeat potential through gifting, collection building, and seasonal demand. Factor 6 is creative potential, and this matters more than ever. TikTok CPMs climbed 16% year over year, and high-performing creative loses 40% of its efficiency within 7 to 10 days. Products that are visual, UGC-friendly, and trend-adaptable give you a structural advantage. And Factor 7 is trust barrier. How hard is it to convert a cold buyer? Products with sizing complexity or high perceived risk are tougher to sell to someone who's never heard of you. Add up all 7 scores. Maximum is 35. 28 to 35 is top tier, build there. 21 to 27 is viable with optimization. 14 to 20, proceed with caution. Below 14, avoid it. In Branvas's experience, founders who evaluate products on gross margin alone are 3 times more likely to face a cash flow squeeze within 90 days of launch. The BVS gives you the full picture before you spend a dollar. Okay, so here's where it gets interesting. Let's actually use the BVS and compare 2 real product categories side by side. Category A is private label jewelry. Think a gold-plated pendant necklace, costs $4 to $8 to source, retails for $35 to $65. Category B is a decorative home decor item. A ceramic vase costs $12 to $18, retails for $45 to $60. On gross margin alone, jewelry scores a 5 doime, it hits 70% plus. Home decor gets a 4, sitting around 45 to 55%. So far, not a huge gap, but here's where everything changes. On shipping economics, jewelry gets a 5 doime, bubble mailer under $4. Home decor gets a 2 because those vases trigger dimensional weight surcharges that eat your margins alive. Return risk? Jewelry scores a 5E, no fit issues, it's not fragile. Home decor scores a 3 because breakage and size mismatch push returns to 15 to 20%. Perceived value? Jewelry gets a 5. A tiny necklace that weighs almost nothing feels worth $65. A vase is often commoditized and easy to price compare, so it gets a 3. Repeat purchase potential. Jewelry scores a 4 thanks to gifting and collection behavior. Vases are typically one-time purchases, so that's a 2. Creative potential. Jewelry gets a 5. It performs incredibly well in UGC and aesthetic video content. Vases are static and hard to make compelling in short-form video. That's a 3. Trust barrier, both score a 4, though for different reasons. The final score, jewelry lands at 33 out of 35. Top tier, home decor comes in at 21. Viable, but it's going to require serious optimization. The takeaway here is that jewelry doesn't win just because of gross margin. It wins because of the combination cheap shipping, almost no returns, extraordinary perceived value, strong creative potential, and real repeat purchase behavior. That's the whole picture. Now, let's talk about the 9 best high-margin product categories to sell online in 2026. I'm going to run through each one with real numbers and real risks, so stick with me on this. Number 1. Jewelry and accessories, with a BVS of 33 out of 35. This is the standout category by every meaningful metric. Gross margins run 70 to 85%. A pendant necklace ships for under $4. Return rates for accessories sit around 12% compared to 20 to 30 for apparel. The perceived value per gram is basically unmatched in physical products. The risk? Competition. But the solution is private label branding, custom packaging, a brand story, a curated aesthetic. When that branding is in place, the same product commands 40 to 60% higher prices. This is exactly what Branvas was built for. Private label jewelry brands launched without minimum order quantities, with branding, packaging, and fulfillment handled end-to-end. Number 2, beauty and skincare accessories, BVS of 31. Think gua sha tools, facial rollers, lash kits. Gross margins run 65 to 80%, and return rates are just 4 to 10% because of hygiene restrictions. The risk is customer acquisition cost. Beauty brands on Meta averaged $42 per customer in 2025, and creative fatigue hits fast. Number 3, phone and tech accessories at 28. Phone cases and MagSafe accessories are lightweight and high margin, with a constant wave of new buyers every time a new phone model drops. The risk is extreme commoditization and price wars. Number 4, digital products at 27. 100% gross margin because there's nothing physical to source or ship. But without an existing audience, the customer acquisition cost can be brutal because buyers need to trust you before buying something intangible. Number 5, wellness accessories at 26. Resistance bands, massage tools, posture correctors. Great problem-solving creative angles, but watch out for health claim compliance and trend fatigue. Number 6, pet accessories at 25. Pet owners spend freely and emotionally. The category has the lowest customer acquisition cost in DTC, around $23 per customer. Just stay away from bulky items like pet beds. Number 7, lightweight home decor at 23. Wall art and small decorative items can work, but only if you stick to flat, lightweight products and build a strong aesthetic brand. Number 8, print-on-demand apparel at 20. This one often gets marketed as high margin, but after the print provider's base cost, 20 to 30% return rates, and processing fees, the contribution margin on a $35 t-shirt can be as low as $3 to $5. Proceed with caution. And number 9, niche tools and organizers at 22. Kitchen gadgets and desk organizers can do well on TikTok, but these products often have short windows of peak demand before the market saturates. All right, now let's talk about the actual math, because this is the part that separates sellers who make money from sellers who think they're making money. Here's the formula. Contribution margin equals your retail price minus cost of goods, minus shipping cost, minus payment processing fees. That's typically about 3% plus 30 cents, minus your returns cost, minus packaging cost. Then divide that by the retail price, and you've got your contribution margin percentage. Let me show you how this plays out with 2 real examples. First, a private label pendant necklace. Retail price, $48. Subtract $8 for the product cost. Subtract $4 for shipping in a bubble mailer. Subtract about $1.70 for payment processing. Returns cost, with a 3% return rate at $20 per return, that's only about 60 cents per unit. Packaging is $2. Your contribution margin, $31.71. That's a 66% contribution margin. Really strong. Now compare that to a ceramic vase. Retail price, $60. Product cost, $15. But here's where it gets ugly. Shipping with dimensional weight fees hits $18. Payment processing is about $2. Returns cost with a 17% return rate, $4.25 per unit. Packaging for something fragile, $4. Your contribution margin, $16.71. That's just 28%. Here's what's wild. The vase has a 75% gross margin. Sounds amazing, right? But after real-world costs, it collapses to 28%. The necklace delivers more than double the contribution margin percentage. This is exactly why you can't just look at gross margin. And if you want to run these numbers for your own product idea, Branvas has a free profit calculator on their site. I'll drop the link in the description. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. Because perceived value is the multiplier that improves everything else in your business. It raises your average order value. It lowers your customer acquisition cost because your creative converts better. It reduces return rates because buyers feel they received something premium. And it enables pricing that competitors can't easily undercut. This is backed by real consumer psychology. People use price and presentation as shortcuts to judge quality. When a product arrives in premium packaging, the buyer's perception of its value goes up, which reduces buyer's remorse, cuts returns, and increases the chance of a repeat purchase and a referral. A PwC survey found that consumers are willing to pay nearly a 10% premium for products they perceive as premium. On a $65 necklace, that's over $6 of additional margin captured purely through how you present it. And jewelry in particular benefits from deeply ingrained cultural associations with value, gifting, and personal identity. Buyers aren't just purchasing a physical product, they're purchasing meaning, occasions, relationships, self-expression. That symbolic dimension makes jewelry uniquely resistant to commoditization when it's branded correctly. Here's something I see founders underestimate constantly: the power of packaging. At Branvas, we've watched the same product command 40 to 60% higher prices simply because the unboxing experience signals premium quality. Custom packaging, a logo, a brand story, tissue paper, a little reveal moment that transforms a physical product into a high-value experience. That's not markup. That's margin architecture. Now, let's talk about the traps, because not every product with a high gross margin percentage is actually a good business to build. Trap number 1, high gross margin combined with high shipping weight. This is the most common one. A product that costs $10 to source and retails for $50 looks like an 80% gross margin. But if it ships in a large box and triggers dimensional weight fees, shipping alone can be $18 to $25. After returns and payment fees, there's almost nothing left. Trap number 2, high return rate categories that destroy your contribution margin silently. Apparel returns run 20 to 30%. Footwear runs 17 to 30%. A product with a 55% gross margin and a 25% return rate, where each return costs $20 to process, the real margin is dramatically lower than the headline number. Trap number 3. Commoditized products with low barriers to entry. When anyone can source the same product from the same supplier and list it on the same platform, the only way to compete is price. And price wars grind margins down to nothing. And trap number 4, trend-dependent products with short shelf lives. Something goes viral on TikTok in January, and by March, the market is saturated. Sellers who build around a single viral product often end up with dead inventory and 0 repeat customers. So, watch out for these large ceramic vases where shipping costs eat 30% of revenue, fast fashion dresses with 30% return rates, generic phone cables stuck in price wars at $8, viral TikTok gadgets with a 3-week lifespan, and Amazon-only products where the 15% referral fee plus FBA fees compress your net margin to 5 to 8%. All right, so you know what to sell and what to avoid. Now, let's talk about how to actually launch a high-margin product brand in 2026. Here's the step-by-step framework. Step 1. Validate the category using the BVS before you source anything. Run the numbers on shipping weight, return rates, and perceived value before you spend a single dollar. If the category scores below 21, move on. Don't fall in love with a product that doesn't have the economics to support a business. Step 2. Choose a niche and a specific customer avatar. Jewelry is not a niche. Minimalist gold jewelry for women who work in professional environments. That's a niche. The more specific your avatar, the more efficient your creative will be, and the lower your customer acquisition cost. Step 3. Source or white label with branding built in. Do not do generic drop shipping. For jewelry and accessories specifically, Branvas's brand-as-a-service model lets you skip the sourcing and logistics maze entirely. You bring the brand vision, and Branvas handles product, packaging, and blind fulfillment. Step 4. Build perceived value through packaging and brand story before you invest in ads. A $3 branded box and a 50-cent handwritten note card can add $10 to $15 of perceived value to a product. Step 5. Test with paid creative on a small budget and measure contribution margin per acquisition, not ROAS. This is important. ROAS tells you how much revenue your ads generated. Contribution margin per acquisition tells you whether that revenue was actually profitable. These are very different numbers, and optimizing for the wrong one is a common and expensive mistake. And step 6, scale what works and kill what doesn't within 60 days. Be ruthless. If a product isn't hitting contribution margin targets after 60 days of testing, move on. The opportunity cost of sticking with a marginal product is enormous. Here's the single most important takeaway from this video. Stop picking products based on gross margin alone and start evaluating the full picture with contribution margin, shipping costs, return rates, and perceived value. If you want to start a jewelry brand with high margins and no inventory risk, head to branvas.com. I'll drop the link right in the description. If this video helped you, hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment telling me which product category you're thinking about launching in 2026. I'm June. See you in the next one.